What's tragic to me is how many have claimed to have lost their faith because of the theory of evolution. Evolution only tells you how you get from that little single-celled critter to that engine right there. It can't tell you how the single-celled critter got there. And so just as the Big Bang is not a theory of how things came into existence, because you have to look beyond the Big Bang, the theory of evolution cannot explain the origin of the first celled critter. In fact, the origin of life itself is one of the most vexing puzzles in all the universe for the evolutionists. When you dig down even deeper into the cell, to the nucleus, you find there the most intricate computer programming language in the cosmos. I'm talking about the 3 million units of DNA which are located at the center of every one of your 100 trillion body cells. The DNA is a double helix structure of intertwined bases labeled A, G, C, and T. It's not like these sequence of letters is strung together randomly. They act like letters in an alphabet and provide a written blueprint for all the cell's activities. Every cell in the human body includes more information in the form of these letters in all 30 volumes of the encyclopedia. Bill Gates said, "DNA is like a software program, only much more complex than anything we've ever devised." The odds of this superstructure of tightly packed information self-assembling without any intelligent aid are monstrously minute. The eminent scientist Dr. Stephen C. Meyer states that for a protein molecule to assemble, first you need the right bonds between amino acids. Second, amino acids come in right-handed and left-handed versions, and you can only use the left-handed ones. Then the amino acids must link up in a specified sequence, like letters in a sentence. Run the odds of all these things falling into place on their own, and you find that the probabilities of forming a rather short functional protein is 1 with 125 zeros after it. And that would only be one protein molecule. A minimally complex cell would need between 300 and 500 protein molecules. So all I'll say is this. The theory of evolution was popularized by Charles Darwin in the 19th century. What Darwin and the scientists of his day thought about the cell is drastically different than what we know now. He thought that the cell was a box, something like a box filled with jello that had a nucleus. It doesn't take much to assemble something like that. But here's what Darwin said in his famous work. If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive modifications, so by evolution, my theory would absolutely break down. And what we now know about the cell absolutely blows Darwin's criteria out of the water.
Darwin wrote The Origin of Species in 1859, published in 1859. He had an idea of the cell as being quite simple, correct?
Yeah, everybody did.
Okay. If he thought of the cell as being a Buick, what is the cell now in terms of its complexity by comparison?
A galaxy.
A galaxy.
A galaxy.
What do we now know that a cell is? If it's not a lump of jello, what would you compare it to?
It's a nanofactory.
If Darwin thought a cell was, say, a mud hut, what do we now know that a cell is?
I would say it would be more complicated than a Saturn V.
So what is in a cell as far as we know now?
A world that Darwin never could have imagined.
The cell may be the most dynamic, putting one mass of activity going on, bringing information out from across the cell, opening doors, closing doors, motor molecules. Well, actually, motor molecules moving along tracks. It is probably one of the most dynamic physical systems in the universe.
We've got this whole automated city. Everything is automated, and it's a level of nanotechnology which would cause any engineer to drool.
It's Broadway without the traffic lights.
All right, well now the issue with the cell isn't just that it's complex. It's what this guy named Michael Behe wrote in his book, said that they're irreducibly complex. And what I mean by that is, let's return to the engine analogy. Engine has many elaborate working parts. And Steve, sorry if I get this stuff wrong. There's a spark plug which ignites the fuel, the distributor to get the timing of the ignition just right, the piston which compresses fuel for power, and the crankshaft which turns all the rods and gears. If any one of these parts was not functional in the engine would not start, much less serve any meaningful purpose in the car. In the same way as Behe points out, there's the nucleus, the mitochondria, the Golgi apparatus, and all these sorts of things that function exactly like machinery in a car engine. Counting everything, there are more than 20 different sections in the cell. And if any of these structures does not function, the cell cannot operate properly. And you can't assemble a cell piece by piece, or else it would not serve its purpose at those stages. And that's what the entire theory of evolution rests on. But you get even more intricate as you go along. Even the structures which make up the cell are irreducibly complex. Many bacteria have what's called a flagellum. It's a complicated whip-like structure that propels the bacteria, like an outboard motor on a boat. Much like an engine, the flagellum consists of a paddle, a rotor, and a motor, with each of these components consisting of various proteins. In addition, the flagellum can spin at the dizzying pace of 10,000 rotations per minute. Whoops. Behe says, not only that, but the propeller can stop spinning within a quarter turn and instantly start spinning the other way at 10,000 RPMs. A flagellum is on the order of a couple microns. A micron is 1/20,000th of an inch. Most of its length is in the propeller. The motor itself will only be 1/100,000th of an inch long. Even with all our technology, we can't even begin to create something like this. And I think the last statement he made is revealing. We're led to believe that we humans, for all our sophistication, cannot even get close to creating life, and yet blind forces acting randomly can assemble the living cell with all its robust operations. Cambridge astronomer Fred Hoyle remarked, "A junkyard contains all the bits and pieces of a 747. A whirlwind happens to blow through the yard. What is the chance that after its passage, a fully assembled 747, ready to fly, will be found standing there? I'd say it's about the same odds of you landing a hot date, Fred." He puts it... He puts it at about 1 in 10 to the 40,000th power. That's 1 with 40,000 zeros after it. And when you take a step back, when you look at tissues and organs, and finally organisms, the complexity only deepens. If our cells are engines, then our bodies are more like factories with trillions of operating parts. The human eye is a camera-like mechanism which contains countless complex structures, including a lens and a retina that includes 137 million light-sensitive cells. The lungs act like filters which capture oxygen from the air you breathe and siphon out waste products which you exhale. The heart is a multifaceted, four-chambered engine which beats 100,000 times and pumps 1,900 gallons of blood every day. I stated earlier that there are perhaps as many stars in the universe as there are grains of sand in the entire world, and yet, as one anti-creationist man points out, in man is a 3-pound brain which, as far as we know, is the most complex and orderly arrangement of matter in the universe.